The letter wasn't meant for me. But it changed everything I believed about the woman who used to call me her daughter." Bianca had always considered herself lucky. A stable job in Waco, a husband with a steady business, and a mother-in-law who didn't fit the usual tropes. Evelyn was warm, helpful, and strangely invested in Bianca's happiness, or so it seemed. For 7 years, Mason had been on the road more often than not. His construction materials business took him across counties, sometimes states. He'd return home tired but smiling. Always with gifts, always with charm. They never had children. By mutual decision, or maybe by quiet resignation. Mason said they had time. Bianca believed him. Evelyn, now 63, lived alone in her original home across town. She'd lost her husband young and raised Mason by herself. A fact she mentioned often but never bitterly. She and Bianca had a rhythm, calls twice a week, weekend dinners, and the occasional unsolicited advice about recipes or retirement accounts. It wasn't a perfect bond, but it was real, or so Bianca thought. When Evelyn mentioned her knee pain worsening, Bianca offered what felt natural, move in. The guest room was barely used. Mason agreed without much comment. Evelyn hesitated, as if weighing something invisible, then smiled and said yes. That week, Bianca drove across town to begin cleaning out Evelyn's old bedroom. The drawers were mostly filled with linens, scented sachets, and old Reader's Digest magazines. It was comforting in a strange way, until the bottom drawer of the nightstand stuck halfway out. Bianca tugged gently, then harder. It finally slid free, revealing a small envelope tucked behind a stack of church bulletins. No stamp, no address, just folded, cream-colored stationery with a floral border. Curious, Bianca unfolded it, and read, "He needs someone who understands him better than his wife does. Someone who knows how to be silent when silence is needed. Who can hear him even when he doesn't speak." There was no name, no date. Bianca read it again. The handwriting was Evelyn's, flowing cursive, the kind you only see from someone who still writes thank you cards by hand. At first, she didn't panic. Maybe it was something old. Maybe it wasn't even about Mason. But something didn't sit right. The phrasing, the gentleness, the familiarity. His wife. She closed the drawer slowly, her breath catching in her throat. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, like dust had stirred somewhere deeper than the surface. She tucked the letter into her purse without knowing why. Back home, Mason was in the garage, fixing something. Bianca made dinner. They didn't talk much that evening. Nothing felt off, and that's what made it worse. Later, as they lay in bed, Bianca glanced at him. He was scrolling on his phone, completely at ease. She wanted to ask, "Do you know who your mother thinks understands you better than me?" But the words stayed inside. Instead, she turned away and closed her eyes. That night, the letter replayed itself in her mind like a song she couldn't forget. Not loud, just persistent. The next morning, Evelyn called. "Thank you again for cleaning up. Sweetheart," she said cheerfully, "you didn't find anything embarrassing, I hope." Bianca hesitated. "No," she replied, "just the usual." She hung up soon after and sat at the kitchen table, the letter beside her coffee cup. The ink was slightly faded, the paper creased from age, but the message felt fresh, direct, dangerous. Bianca wasn't sure what it meant yet, but she knew one thing. Something had been hidden, and now that she'd read those words, she couldn't unsee the possibility that her life, her marriage, might not be what she thought it was. Bianca didn't sleep much after finding the letter. It sat folded in her desk drawer like a secret waiting to be reread. But she didn't need to. The words were etched into her. She repeated them silently during meetings, while brushing her teeth, while making dinner. Someone who understands him better than his wife. One morning, after Mason left for another 3-day trip, she made a decision. She contacted a private investigator, not to follow Mason, but to audit him, financially. 2 weeks later, the report arrived. A woman named Alyssa, 29, living in a small town 2 hours outside Waco. No shared business, no reason for recurring payments. Except there they were, monthly transfers from Mason's private account, hidden behind vague descriptions like consultation and miscellaneous services. Bianca stared at the name for a long time, then Googled it. The social media profiles were locked down, but one tagged photo showed Alyssa with someone unmistakable, Evelyn. The caption read, "Spa day with this queen. Blessed to be part of her circle." Bianca sat still for nearly an hour. Then she got in the car. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Alyssa lived in a small, pale blue house on a corner lot. Roses bloomed along the walkway. It was too perfect. Bianca knocked once. Alyssa answered. She was beautiful, in that effortless way that required no effort at all. Slightly surprised, she opened the door wider when Bianca introduced herself. "You're Mason's wife." Bianca nodded. A long pause. "You should come in," Alyssa said. The living room was cozy, lived in, and full of photos. Photos of Mason, and Evelyn, and Alyssa, together, smiling, at brunch, at a Christmas party, at what looked like a lake retreat. Bianca scanned them all. She couldn't look away. "I didn't think you'd find out this way," Alyssa said. "Evelyn said you were safe. That you wouldn't look too closely." Bianca said nothing. "I didn't ask for this," Alyssa continued. "He came to me." She encouraged it. "Said you didn't see him the way he needed to be seen. That he needed more." Bianca turned to face her. "And you believed her?" "She was kind, supportive. She made me feel like I wasn't the bad one." Bianca almost laughed, almost cried. She walked to a photo and gently lifted it. Evelyn and Alyssa, arms around each other, matching robes, matching smiles. "Did he tell you he loved you?" Alyssa nodded, slowly, "but only when he wasn't with you. When it was just this life." Bianca placed the frame down. "It wasn't just an affair," she said. "It was a whole other life. One I wasn't even allowed to know existed." Alyssa didn't respond. Bianca left quietly. She didn't slam the door, didn't break down. She drove home with the windows down, the wind whipping through her hair, but her chest still felt closed. At home, she passed Evelyn in the hallway. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Evelyn asked. Bianca looked at her, really looked at her. "Fine," she said, "just thinking about how quiet a house can get when truth finally moves in." That night, she didn't bring it up to Mason. Not yet. She sat beside him on the couch, watching a show she couldn't follow, wondering how long she'd been a placeholder for someone else's fantasy. The letter was still in her drawer, but now, she knew who it had been written for. Bianca waited until the next morning. Evelyn was in the kitchen, stirring coffee like nothing had changed. The sun streamed in through the window, catching the soft gray in her hair, the calm in her posture. Bianca placed the printed photos on the table. The brunch, the spa, the lake. Evelyn glanced at them, then back at her. "So," she said softly, as if the moment had been inevitable. "How long?" Bianca asked. Evelyn didn't pretend to misunderstand. "A few years," she said. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." Bianca laughed. "Once, sharp. You supported her. You played mother to her." Evelyn sighed. "I supported my son. That's what mothers do." "You helped him cheat." "No," Evelyn said, still calm. "I helped him survive a marriage that never fit him." Bianca stared at her, words forming and dissolving. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it ever had. "He chose me," Bianca whispered. "He married me, and then he broke under the weight of pretending it was enough." Bianca picked up the letter, the one she had found. She placed it beside the photos. "You wrote this. You said she understood him better than I did." "Because she listened," Evelyn replied, without expecting him to be someone he wasn't. Bianca couldn't speak. She left the table, walked to the bedroom, and locked the door behind her. That evening, Mason returned. She met him at the door. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just handed him an envelope. Inside were the bank statements, the photos, a printed transcript of the conversation with Alyssa. Mason read in silence, then looked up. "It was easier that way," he said. "She never judged me. You always expected more." Bianca felt her chest cave inward. Not from the betrayal, but from the simplicity of his answer. They didn't just betray her. They built an entirely different truth, one where she had never belonged. "You let your mother become your compass," she said. "You let her define what loyalty meant, and never asked if I agreed." He didn't respond. She walked away. The silence he left behind felt permanent, like a choice already made. And this time, she would be the one to answer it. Bianca didn't file for divorce. Not immediately. She asked Evelyn to move out within a week. There was no yelling, no dramatic goodbye, just a firm request, and a set of packed bags waiting by the front door. Evelyn didn't fight it. She simply nodded, as if she'd been preparing for this exile long before it arrived. Mason stayed, but the air between them grew thinner by the day. Alyssa vanished quietly. No more payments left his account. No more photos surfaced. No more spa days. No whispers. Bianca moved through the house like someone recovering from vertigo. Each room was a memory she didn't trust anymore. Each chair, each plate, each drawer held echoes of assumptions she now knew were wrong. In the silence that followed, she began to write. Not emails, not texts, letters. She wrote one to Evelyn, 7 pages long. It started gently, then shifted. "You taught your son how to lie," she wrote, "not by example, but by approval. You gave him permission to build a life around deceit, then helped furnish it with your grace." She never sent it. She wrote one to Mason. 2. A letter not of blame, but of loss. "I didn't lose you to another woman. I lost you to a version of yourself you wouldn't let me see." She burned that one. And finally, she wrote one to herself. A promise, a reckoning, a kind of rebirth. On Evelyn's birthday, Bianca drove to the house where Evelyn now lived alone. She didn't knock, didn't ask to come in. She left a small box on the porch. Inside was the letter Bianca had found, the one Evelyn never meant her to see. And beneath it, Bianca's own letter. The one that ended with, "You taught your son how to lie. But you taught me something too. That silence, when given enough time, becomes permission." Then she walked away. No door opened. No one called after her. But Bianca didn't need noise anymore. She had learned something more powerful. How to live without pretending. How to leave without hating. And how to stop being someone's daughter-in-law, when she was never truly seen as one to begin with. She didn't burn it all down. She just walked away, carrying the truth, not the ashes. Because sometimes, survival isn't about confrontation. It's about no longer asking for a place in someone else's version of loyalty. But what if the betrayal doesn't come from a person? What if the third party is made of code, empathy, and digital desire? Next on Infidelity Chronicles, Isaiah from Corpus Christi. He didn't cheat physically. Until the AI affair turned real. He said it wasn't real. His wife said that didn't matter. And when fantasy finally knocked on the door, so did the consequences.